Awesome. We are live. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm super excited to have a chat today about military spouse VAs, virtual assistants. And I have a woman that's awesome. Her name is Laura Renner. She owns a company and she employs military spouse VAs. So what we're chatting about today is how when a company offers the opportunity to bring on military spouse as a 100% virtual assistant, what happens? And I'm going to ask a couple of questions to Laura about this topic, and it'll just be fun and relaxed today. So if you're a military spouse tuning in and watching, wink, wink, I encourage you to listen and get the nitty gritty behind the scenes about what it looks like to the employer if you've ever been interested in being a VA. Laura, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about your company, and then we'll jump into the nitty gritty about what's it like to hire and employ VAs.
Sure. Sounds good. Yes, my name is Laura. I'm an Army brat, Air Force veteran, but now I'm back in the reserve, and started the company about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. We run it kind of like a staffing agency, but we're basically recruiting military spouses and then pairing them. We focus on small businesses, oftentimes solo business owners. So they're wearing all the hats, doing everything for their business, and they hire us to help them out with that.
Awesome. And so tell me what made you enter into this space. You come from a military background. You're obviously familiar with military spouses and the life they live. What made you want to open a business focused around military spouse talent?
Sure. Yeah. So I never married. I'm not married myself, but growing up, I saw my mom looking for work every time we PCS. My sister-in-law saw the same thing. And even just when I was on active duty, the spouses in the office having to go through that same thing every time. It was always the second conversation. Where are you PCSing from? What's your spouse do? Or what are they doing for work type thing. So I knew it was an issue. And then I was doing recruiting for small businesses, and I was coming across a lot of business owners who just weren't ready to commit to an employee that they were responsible for, kind of thing. But they still needed help. And they were just nervous to pull that trigger. And around that time, I started thinking, oh, maybe we should offer VA services to these clients. And my brother was getting ready to PCS again. And so I was having that conversation with my sister-in-law about work at their next duty station. And it hit me like, here's this untapped resource of talent and this unmet need of support, and just put two and two together. And that's where it came from.
That's awesome. So military spouses, let's talk about what they bring to the table in terms of that talent. Let's talk about your clients, the other employers, the other businesses you're working with. What is their experience when they hire a military spouse to come on and be a virtual assistant?
I think from the employer stance side, what I've noticed is there's immediately a higher level of trust because they know the spouses generally are responsible and proactive, and they're not going to flake, kind of thing, right? And so that's the reputation of the military and military spouses, military families, right? So they know already they have a higher level of trust. What they learn once they start working with one is the versatility that spouses bring. And I always say, regardless of work experience, one thing I've noticed across many military spouses is their ability to do research. Like, how many times have you thought you were PCSing to one location and you go and research everything about that location only to find out you're going somewhere else, or you're not going anywhere, or all the things that change and that you don't know about, and you learn to adapt and research and deal with those changes as they come. That a lot of business owners are, at least our clients, enjoy that aspect of military spouse capability because, like I said, regardless of previous experience, most spouses have that capability.
That's awesome. And I agree. I've had no idea how many cities I've researched thinking, we might go there. Let me check it out.
Right.
We don't go there. We end up at Fort Hood, the great place in Texas. So. Okay. So let's talk about literally, you deal in military spouse talent. What I do is I'm a military spouse staffing agency. And whenever I speak with employers, I tell them, hey, if you want to hire a military spouse, you're going to have 100 of them applying for a job with you because that spouse is going to tell all their friends. Then you're going to get on the spouse radar and you'll be swatting them away like flies. I make a joke. I'm so serious. It happens every time. Mm-hmm. So if you could give a tip to other employers when they are ready to bring on military spouse talent, what would it be?
Oh, A tip, I think, yes, be prepared for an influx. I would say be prepared for a wide variety of experience and skills. And also, I think probably the number one tip is ignore the resume because
Okay.
it's, I feel like it's because our employment lives off of resumes. Even if you know you're hiring a spouse, when you see, oh, they move every 2 years, they can't seem to keep a job down, or they were working in an office at this location and then they went and worked at Target at this location. Like they're kind of like, what's wrong? This person can't figure out what they want to do with their life. Like you kind of default to that mindset. And so I would say my tip to employers is be cautious when you're looking at military spouse resumes. Don't really consider that um, their career path of choice. It was their career path, making it work with what they had.
Beautiful advice, and I love it. I have to have the resume chat all the time. A lot of hiring managers, it is built into their brain and into their internal systems as a company. The resume is the person. And in
Right.
truth, the military spouse resume is often a nightmare. It is a good experience. There's huge resume gaps. They've
Yes.
been in Germany for 4 years and couldn't find a job. And when they came back, they looked like they were just sitting on the
Right.
couch with potato chips. And we all know that is not the truth.
Right.
I love it. So if you are going to quote unquote ignore the resume, if you are the hiring manager and you're considering bringing on spouses, how do you evaluate them and understand them outside of looking at a resume?
Right. And so then it's like more looking at the type of work they've done and not how long they did it or when they left, that kind of thing, but really focus on the type of work they've done, including volunteer work. I think we often overlook volunteer work, but when they're serving as secretary, president, treasurer, or fundraiser or anything like that, those skills transfer over to the workplace. And oftentimes we discount those skills and that experience. So I would just say really focus on the experience that they have, the content of the resume versus the structure of the resume.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It's wonderful. And it's so true because even if I find a military spouse, they jump on board and they're only able to do a job for a year or even less than that. They pour their heart and soul into it, learn it, master it, and then they have that tangible skill set moving forward for the rest of their career. So I love it. It's about quality of their tenure there. And often, I think the military spouses discount their own experience.
Yes.
Okay, well, I worked at Target for 1 year. That's not good enough. The rule is that you have to work there for a year, right? Or longer. And it's just, I think we do ourselves a disservice by discounting our own experience. And so I love what you're saying about take a look at the type of job and not necessarily the tenure that they were there, not the amount of time. And then volunteer work, hugely important because we all end up dabbling in volunteerism to get out of the house and to meet people. And if we are not currently employed, we dabble in volunteer work to make ourselves productive and a part of the community.
Right.
And there is a huge military spouse volunteer force out there that are learning and doing things and staying fresh in the workforce. And so let's talk about, if you are a company, if you have never experienced anything about military spouse hiring, but let's pretend you might have a veteran hiring program in place. What is the difference in a military spouse and a veteran?
Oh, I always say generally the difference between a military spouse and a military person is that a military person has had training. Like they were taught how to be in the military. There's no boot camp for military spouse, right? And so military spouses have to learn by jumping in. Like there might be a what's it called, a workshop, how to succeed as a military spouse or whatever, but that's not boot camp, right? So a military person's career is completely laid out step by step. You need to do these things to get promoted. If you do these things, you get in trouble. Like it is step by step laid out. And there's nothing like that for spouses. So spouses have to be resilient on their own, and they learn to rely on their community, and they learn to adapt really on their own. And I think that's very commendable. And so in some ways, or a lot of ways, it's not helpful, right? But in some ways it's helpful, especially when they're transitioning to the workplace, military spouses figure it out. Whereas a veteran might be like, whoa, this is a whole different game field here. I'm lost. I don't quite know what to do. And as someone who did transition, right, like I see that. And I don't mean that as a knock against veterans. It's just when everything is laid out for you and it's basically a whole new different world that you have to adjust to. Whereas spouses, that was their experience in the military. They had to adjust to that whole new world. So they already have that experience of having to figure it out on their own.
I like that. You're right. I served, so I have a hat in both worlds. I was in the Army myself for 6 years, and I've been a military spouse for going on 5 years. And I joke, but it's so serious that I got slapped in the face with life as a military spouse, and I had no idea what was coming.
Right.
I thought, wow, I was a soldier. I got this figured out. It's not going to be hard for me. Well, number one was one of my hardest years outside of 2020, which we're all having a hard time, so it doesn't even count. But for me, I couldn't believe how hard it was transitioning into becoming a military spouse, despite the fact that I had served.
Right.
It just blew my mind. So you're right. I had to figure it out as a military spouse. As a soldier, I just showed up to work and wore the right uniform, and I did my job. Exactly. It was all set up for me. I didn't have to think, which is sort of the point of, how they set up the military, I think. But
right.
Okay, so we have just a couple more minutes here. I like to keep these little clips to about 15 minutes. You deal in military spouses. Your company hires military spouse virtual assistants and brings them on and puts them at other companies. You're sort of a matchmaker of sorts. Mm-hmm. What qualities, if you are a company and you're looking for a new VA, you're targeting these small companies, right? Mm-hmm. What qualities as a company does a military spouse bring that just a regular VA off the street, a regular civilian, if we want to call them that, what qualities does a spouse bring that a civilian would not bring?
I think we've touched on a couple of those already, right? The versatility, the get in there and figure it out, the proactiveness, the adaptability, right? That's what the word I was looking for, the adaptability, where they're like, okay, this is new. I've not dealt with this technology before, but I got it. I'm going to go figure it out. And then their ability to research. That's like the one skill that I've seen every military spouse have, regardless of work experience. And so, which a lot of small businesses need, right? When they're like, oh, I need a new software. Can you go look at which ones I should consider purchasing? They can dive in there and research it and figure it out. And so I think adaptability and ability to research are probably the top two off the top of my head.
Well, and I like it. I asked those questions for a reason. What's the difference in a spouse and a veteran? And then what's the difference in a spouse and a civilian? Because I wanted to hear your 2 cents on that. Spouses don't have any training. They are not veterans. They didn't go through the boot camp. And then they bring a life experience that breeds research, adaptability, and ability to kind of just move and what's that saying I'm thinking of and can't think of? It's roll with the punches.
Exactly. That is spot on. Roll with the punches. Exactly.
Roll with the punches. Yes. Yes. Okay. So if you are, for the last couple of minutes here, is there any final things that you would like to say about your experience as a company that brings military spouse virtual assistants into the workforce and places them at other companies? Is there anything else that you would like to say?
I think I'm just so grateful and honored that, we've been doing this for a little over 5 years, and just seeing the growth and seeing how we're able to serve both communities. It's really fulfilling and just keeps us going every day. And like our internal team is all military spouses except for me. And just the commitment and the drive for what we're trying to do. It's really fulfilling.
Awesome. Well, I have found in my work, I am surrounded by military spouses and feel the same sentiment. It drives me further. I live, eat, and breathe. Everything I do is to help military spouse careers. And it's because I see and live this life every day. And every time I hang out with more military spouses, it inspires me more because they're such an amazing group of people. They're so diverse and they bring this wonderful perspective to the workplace. And so it's just I'm full of gratitude every day just to be able to talk to spouses. And yesterday I heard myself 3 times, 3 times on the phone. I got super excited when I was talking to a military spouse on the phone, and I kept saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just rambling. I get really excited when I'm talking to military spouses." And I had to just tell them, "Sorry, I have to catch myself. I just start rambling because I get so excited to talk to spouses."
Right.
And I do it. All right. So I appreciate you, Laura. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting about your experience bringing military spouse virtual assistants to the workforce. If you have any questions now or later, drop a comment in the chat. I am going to be fielding these for questions. If you have any questions for Laura, I will put you in contact with her if she doesn't see the comments. And thank you for watching. I appreciate you so much. Everybody have a good day.